for your music project, whatever it might be. So that's what the mission statement is. Let me kind of blow this up a little bit bigger so you can see it here. Okay, so this is a nonfiction book, and the student it's called Where Did Grandma Go? And it seeks to educate and enlighten African American caregivers of children about different and real emotions regarding the concept of death. And actually, I remember this project. This was really good. This student was doing I think her daughter actually was devastated after her grandmother died. So her book project for Project 3 was to write a book about this, about how her daughter learned to cope with it, right? And so again, we're not going to go through the whole content here, but you can see the mission statement is the mission of the book. Remember, not your company, but your book or your music project or your film, whatever it might be. And then you want to have the executive summary, just a little bit of information about yourself, right? And I mean, this student goes into a lot of detail here. You don't necessarily have to go into this much detail, but that's a good example of what you need to do for the executive summary. She provides her company description. Now, I should say that for this project, for Project 3, your company, you don't have to use your company that you're using for EBMS, like your final business plan. You could be a little bit hypothetical here, and you can make up a company if necessary. So for example, if you just have like one book that you're trying to get across, well, you can invent your own company, right? So you could call this Jacques Publishing or something like that. It doesn't have to be your final business plan that you're doing for EBMS, okay? So you can invent that, but just talk a little bit about your company, where it might be based. The product itself is the actual work, right? The content. And let me take a time out here too as well and say that it's perfectly okay, and Cassie might not like this if she's hearing this, but it's perfectly okay to reuse some of the stuff that you used for Project 2. In other words, it's okay in this class to self-plagiarize some of your content here because it does overlap, right? The product that you're talking about for Project 3, it's the same exact product for Project 2, right? So it is okay if you reuse some of the same material here. Just like your executive summary, a lot of this could actually be a lot of what you talked about for your biography for Project 2, right? So keep that in mind, okay? So it's okay. Now, in this case, like, just talk a little bit about the product here. Like, what is it? Is it a CD? Is it a book? Here she talks about the table of contents. So she breaks it up into chapters. And also she as she says here, included with the book is going to be a 2-disc music compilation. So this is kind of a combination of a book as well as a music project. I mean, this is really ambitious, but you don't have to do something like this, but that's what she did, right? Okay, now I will say for Project 3 that if you want to get a really good grade for this project, the manufacturing and distribution strategy is the most important part of Project 3. Let me just repeat that. The manufacturing and distribution strategy is the most important section for Project 3. This is the main thing. And I think it says in the instructions for Project 3 that the manufacturing, it might be different than the distribution. Like there might be a manufacturing section and distribution, but here's the cool thing with the print on demand. Your print on demand company will be both, a lot of times a good one, will be both your manufacturer and distributor. Okay, what I mean by that is that if you go through like a company like CreateSpace, right, they're going to manufacture your CDs if you're on the music side, and they're going to get your stuff on iTunes, and they're also going to distribute them, right, through Amazon or through external channels. But you don't have to worry about distributing, right, because they're going to do both. So your manufacturer and distributor is going to be your print-on-demand company for most of you. Now, in this case, she uses, what do you pronounce this, Ex Libris or something like that. That's kind of a controversial call. I would actually recommend a different print-on-demand company myself, but that's okay though. That's okay. Yeah, there's no right or wrong answer to this. But you see here, what I mean by this is that she says that they're going to offer this package for about $3,000. I personally would stay away from this company myself. You can do it if you want, but I mean, you can go through a company like CreateSpace and do the same thing for about $40, right? And they might not offer you this package, but I mean, you can do it, a lot of these things yourself, right? So that's okay though. She chose that company and she just explains it. You can choose any company that you want as long as you justify it, as long as you explain it. She goes through the financial stuff here. She figures out her royalty rate. And let me also give you a tip for project three. Sometimes the students that don't do as well on project three, they get to this section of manufacturing and distribution and they just say, well, I'm going to use CD Baby, or something like that. But the students that do really well on this, on project three, are the ones that go through this section and will actually go through the financials and they'll figure out the royalty rates. They will figure out and explain how much it's going to cost per unit and how much money they're going to make per unit sold and things like that. Okay, so the more detail that you can provide for this section, the better you're going to do. And just to reiterate, this section is the most important part of project three. Okay, next, but probably the second most important part is the marketing and promotion. And once again, you can reuse a lot of the same stuff that you did for project two for this section. I mean, don't make it verbatim, but I mean, it's perfectly okay if you're going to talk about some of the same strategies that you did for project two, for the marketing and promotion, okay? So in this case, she talks about, social media, an official page. If you want to talk about maybe, I don't know, hypothetically, radio stations, or maybe if you are willing to do interviews and things like that, that would be okay. She's going to use Twitter, and she goes through a lot of detail here. And she talks about radio ads, things like that. You know, in her case, the subject matter for this case would have a good market, I think, with gospel stations. So she points that out. Just the one thing in terms of stylistic here, just in terms of writing, this doesn't have to be an APA, but I would still remember to either do one of two things here. I would either have the paragraphs be separated by a space like that, or at least do this, at least indent the paragraphs. So that's not like just one block here. If you look on the left side here, it's just like one block all the time. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so that's the book side. Okay, so let me move this over here, and let's look at this one. This is, let me blow this up. This is a music example for project three. And as you can see here, I blocked the student's name out again just to be anonymous here, but they talk about the mission of the music here. This is actually an example of something that the student could have done better, because here the mission is they're talking about the artist's music. In general, for project three, what you want to do here, in fact, this is kind of an example of something that you might want to consider of trying to avoid certain parts of this. Because you can see here, the company's product consists of exceptional music from bands all over the world. Okay, this is an example of something that's well written here, but for project three, you want to avoid, when possible, trying to manufacture and distribute a multitude of different endeavors. You want to kind of stick to like one basic project. Basically, the project that you did for project two is what you want to do here. Okay, so for this example, this person is talking about the record company in general or the artist in general. You probably want to make it a little bit more specific than that, right? The executive summary looks good though. He talks about his background, his education, his credentials. He talks about the company, right? The product itself should be a little bit more specific than this, right? Because he's talking about the artist's music in general, but try to be more specific. Try to have a specific project in mind there. But the reason why I pulled this example is because he does do a good job with this part here, the manufacturing and distribution, right? He's going to use CD Baby. He compares it to TuneCore. He says here that the artist can retain 100% royalties, charges a 9% fee, and goes through the financials pretty good here, right? And it kind of justifies it. So that's a good example of what you should be thinking about for this, right? And he talks about what he's going to set the price to be, right? So digital downloads will be $9.99 per album. That's about standard these days, and 99 cents per single, right? So pretty good. And he even, now this is a little bit, a lot. You don't really have to do this much, but he also provides like sales figures, right? And sales projections, things like that. And it actually includes a screenshot of why he's using CD Baby. So this might actually be right from CD Baby's website here. In fact, it is from cdbaby.com. But this is a pretty good illustration of why he chose CD Baby over TuneCore. And again, you can choose TuneCore over CD Baby. There's no right or wrong answer, but just kind of explain why you chose that, okay? So that's why I brought this example up, because it's a pretty good job of the manufacturing and distribution here, of explaining the financials and things like that. And then he also does a pretty good job with the marketing, right? He goes through details about how he's going to use like Google Hangouts and Q&A sessions, um, Facebook, things like that. He talks about demographics, which is good too. Like, who is your target market, right? And if you're going to be using some type of advertising channel, explain why, if you can, why that channel is going to be good for the target market, right? And define who your target market is, right? So really good job of the manufacturing, distribution, and also the marketing here. And then he even includes a logo. I mean, you don't have to. Some of you might have a logo. And he sums it up with a brief conclusion, okay? Let's take a look here at another one here. This is an example of, let's see here. And it looks like this one is let me scroll down to the product here. Okay, it's a short film. That's right. I remember this one. Okay, so yeah, it's a short film. You don't really need a cover page. That's not necessary, but you're certainly welcome to have one if you want. And he just talks about the film here, what it's about. So the mission, remember, it's the mission of the project here, not the company, but the project. And then he talks about biography, remember, that's what your executive summary should be. Then company description, you can make this stuff up. Then the product itself, it's a short film, and it's a story about family, love, death, and the life after. And again, he goes through the content here. We're not going to go through the content here, but manufacturing distribution, he's going to use CreateSpace for this one, right? And explains why he's going to use CreateSpace. So actually, he even says too that it's going to be sold in hard copy as well as digital format. That's one thing that you really want to specify. I assume that most people are probably going to do both, but you definitely at least want to mention that. You know, we're going to use hard copies as well as electronic copies. And then once again, he does a good job here of explaining the royalty rates, the cost per unit, the projections. You don't have to really go through sales projections and things like that, but kind of explaining that. Could have maybe provided even a little bit more detail in this section, but still pretty nice job. Then he goes through a marketing and promotion. He's going to create a web page. He's going to have the web page is going to include contact information, which will allow customers to have or ask any questions or concerns. And then he's going to use social media sites, YouTube. A lot of you would probably want to put together like a promotional piece that you can throw up on YouTube for free, right? Instagram, things like that. And then a brief conclusion. So maybe a little bit more detail could have provided there, but still pretty nice job, right? And then finally, let's go back to this one.